Maya Bennett had been hungry since morning. At 29, she worked long hours at a small cafe in the city. After finishing her shift that evening, she counted the money left in her purse and realized she could afford only one simple meal: a burger, fries, and a bottle of water. It wasn't much, but it was all she had. With the small paper bag in her hand, Maya walked toward the bus stop. Near the entrance of a closed grocery store, she noticed an 8-year-old boy sitting alone on a bench. His dark blue hoodie looked slightly too large for him, and his small hands rested quietly in his lap. He stared at the ground without moving. A few feet away stood a well-dressed man in his late 30s, speaking urgently on his phone. He wore an expensive black suit and stood beside a luxury black SUV. Maya assumed he was the boy's father, but something didn't feel right. The boy looked hungry. Maya slowly approached him. "Hey," she said gently. "Are you waiting for someone?" The boy didn't answer. Maya sat beside him, leaving enough space so he wouldn't feel uncomfortable. "I'm Maya." Still nothing. Then she noticed his eyes move toward the paper bag in her hands. Maya looked down at her meal. She had been waiting all day to eat it. For a moment she hesitated. Then she smiled and opened the bag. "Would you like some?" The boy slowly looked at her. Maya held out the burger. He didn't take it immediately. The well-dressed man suddenly noticed what was happening and stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said. Maya quickly looked up. "Yes?" The man's expression was serious. "Who are you?" Maya stood. "I was just offering him my food." The man looked at the boy. "Did she bother you?" The boy remained silent. Maya felt uncomfortable. "I should go." But before she could leave, the man looked at the paper bag and then at the boy, who was now holding the burger with both hands. The man's expression changed. "He took it?" Maya looked confused. "Yes, is something wrong?" The man stared at the boy. "He hasn't accepted food from a stranger in months." Maya glanced at the child. The man took a slow breath. "My name is Richard Hale." Maya nodded politely. "Okay." Richard almost smiled at her reaction. Most people in the city knew his name. He was a wealthy businessman and CEO of one of the largest real estate companies in the area, but Maya clearly had no idea who he was. Richard sat beside the boy. "This is my son, Noah." Maya looked surprised. "He's your son?" Richard nodded. "And he hasn't spoken in 2 years." Maya looked at Noah again. She didn't ask why. Instead, she simply sat back down. "Well," she said softly, "then he doesn't have to talk." Richard looked at her. Most people always tried to force Noah to speak. Therapists, relatives, teachers, even strangers sometimes said things like, "Come on, say hello." But Maya didn't. She opened the fries and placed them between herself and Noah. "I heard fries taste better when you share them." Noah slowly looked at her. Maya smiled. "That's what I heard." For the first time, Noah's lips moved slightly. It was almost a smile. Richard watched silently. Maya began telling Noah funny stories about her day. She told him how she had spilled coffee on her uniform and how one customer had ordered the same sandwich 3 times. Because he kept forgetting he had already eaten. Noah listened carefully. Then Maya checked the time. "My bus is coming." She stood and looked at Noah. "Enjoy the burger, okay?" Noah looked up at her. Maya smiled. "Good night." She turned to leave. But just before reaching the bus stop, she heard a quiet voice behind her. "Wait!" Maya froze. Richard's eyes widened. Noah was standing. His hands were shaking slightly. Maya slowly turned around. Noah looked directly at her. For the first time in 2 years, he had spoken. "Thank you." Maya smiled. "You're welcome, Noah." Richard stood completely still. His eyes filled with emotion, but he said nothing. He simply watched as Maya stepped onto the bus and disappeared into the evening traffic. And for the first time in 2 years, Richard heard his son's voice. But he had no idea that the woman who had given away her last meal was about to change both of their lives forever. The next morning, Maya arrived at the cafe early. She had forgotten about the boy and his father until lunchtime, when a sleek black SUV stopped outside. Several people inside the cafe turned to look. Richard Hale stepped out. Noah was beside him. Maya stared in surprise as they entered. Richard walked directly toward her table. "Hello, Maya." She smiled politely. Hello. Noah stood quietly beside his father. Richard looked nervous, as though he didn't know what to say. I wanted to thank you. You already did. No, Richard said. I don't think I did. Maya looked at Noah. He's okay? Richard smiled. Last night he spoke again. Maya's face brightened. That's wonderful. Richard nodded. Do you know how long it's been? 2 years. Richard looked down. Exactly 2 years. He explained that Noah's mother had died in a car accident when Noah was 6. Noah had been in the back seat and survived physically. But after losing his mother, he slowly stopped speaking. Richard had spent 2 years trying to help him. The best doctors, the best therapists, private schools. Nothing had worked. But yesterday, Richard said, you sat beside him without expecting anything. Maya smiled softly. He looked like he needed a friend. Richard looked at her for a long moment. That meal was your dinner, wasn't it? Maya tried to laugh. It wasn't a big deal. Richard shook his head. It was to him. Noah slowly stepped forward. He held something behind his back. Maya bent down. What do you have there? Noah gave her a small drawing. It showed a woman sitting beside a boy with a burger and fries between them. Maya smiled. I love it. Noah looked at her. Fries! Maya laughed. Richard smiled too. It was the first time he had seen his son speak so naturally. Over the next few weeks, Richard and Noah occasionally visited the cafe. Maya never treated Richard differently because he was rich. She teased him when he ordered complicated coffee and laughed when he tried to understand the cafe's old cash register. More importantly, Noah slowly began talking again. One afternoon, Richard invited Maya and Noah to sit outside the cafe. I have something to ask you, he said. Maya looked nervous. Richard smiled. Noah is starting a new therapy program. Maya nodded. I know. He wants you to visit sometimes. Maya looked at Noah. Me? Noah nodded. You listen. Maya's eyes softened. Richard watched her quietly. That was the moment he understood something. For 2 years, he had tried to solve his son's pain with money, but Maya had done something money could never buy. She had simply cared. Months passed. Noah continued to improve. He laughed more. He spoke more. He even started telling Maya stories about school. One evening, Richard found Maya outside the cafe after her shift. He was holding a small paper bag. Maya smiled. What is that? Richard handed it to her. Your last meal. She opened it. Inside was a burger, fries, and a bottle of water. Maya looked at him. Richard smiled warmly. Noah insisted. Noah stood beside him. I remembered. Maya laughed. So did I. They sat together outside the cafe as the city lights began to shine. Noah talked about school. Maya listened. Richard watched them, grateful for a kindness that had arrived in their lives at the exact moment they needed it most. Then Noah looked at his father. Dad? Richard turned. Yes? Noah smiled. I think Mom would have liked Maya. Richard looked at Maya. Maya's expression softened. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Richard smiled. I think you're right. And Maya understood that sometimes the smallest act of kindness could open a door that had been closed for years. She had given away the last meal she could afford. She expected nothing in return. But that simple burger and a handful of fries had brought a lost boy's voice back into the world and brought 3 lonely people together when they needed each other most.